There is a particular kind of frustration that comes in midsummer. You walk out to check on things, and the garden looks full, maybe even a little chaotic, but somehow the harvest still feels thin. You're working hard, watering, weeding, waiting, and yet the yield never quite matches the effort. The beds are taken up, the space is gone, and there is not much to show for it. What most gardeners do not realize is that they are only farming in one direction. They are growing across the ground when they could just as easily be growing up into the air above it. An Amish gardener understands this so deeply it is almost instinct. The sky above a garden bed is not empty space, and it is untapped ground. And the plants that climb into it can quietly transform what a garden is capable of producing without adding a single square foot to the footprint. There are 7 climbing plants in particular that earn their place in an Amish garden season after season. One of them, you will find it 4th on this list, is a plant most people think belongs only on the ground. And the last one on this list is something almost no one grows anymore, which is exactly why it is worth paying close attention to. Let's start at the beginning. The first climbing plant is one of the oldest workhorses in any serious kitchen garden, the pole bean. An Amish gardener will tell you without hesitation that this is the plant that taught them the value of vertical growing in the first place. A single row of pole beans, trained up a simple string trellis or a rough-cut wooden frame, will produce across a span of months in a way that a bush bean simply cannot. Where a bush bean comes in strong, gets harvested in a rush, and fades, the pole bean keeps climbing, keeps flowering, and keeps offering. That steady, extended harvest is not an accident, it is the whole point. What most gardeners overlook is how little space the roots of a pole bean actually need, compared to how much it will give you. The underground footprint is modest. The production overhead is generous. Grow them along the back edge of a bed, and they will not shade anything that does not benefit from a little afternoon cover. There is one thing worth knowing that most seed packets will not tell you. Pole beans. When grown up a rough textured surface, a cedar post, unfinished lumber, a woven willow stake cling more readily and require far less tying. The texture gives them something to grip. An Amish gardener does not spend time fussing with clips and ties. They just give the plant something honest to hold on to. A bean that climbs will always outlast a bean that crawls. The second plant is the cucumber. Now, before you move past this one thinking you already know it, consider how most people actually grow cucumbers. They let them sprawl. They give them room on the ground. They watch the vines spread wide. And they spend half the harvest season hunting under leaves for fruit that has gone yellow and seedy without anyone noticing. An Amish gardener almost never grows cucumbers flat. Trained up a simple wire fence or a panel of stretched twine, a cucumber plant changes its behavior entirely. The fruit hangs free, visible, and easy to reach. It stays cleaner. It is less prone to the rot and mildew that follows vines lying against damp soil. And crucially, when you can see every fruit clearly, and you pick them at exactly the right moment, which is the single biggest factor in keeping a plant productive deep into the season. What most gardeners do not know is that cucumbers grown vertically tend to produce straighter, more consistent fruit. There is no curve from resting against the ground. And because air moves freely around the leaves, the plants hold up through humid stretches that would otherwise bring powdery mildew sweeping through a ground-level planting. A cucumber grown off the ground is a different plant altogether, and a far more generous one. The third plant on this list is the climbing nasturtium. Not the compact mounding type most gardeners buy from the garden center, but the trailing, vining variety that an Amish gardener will coax up a fence post or let wind through a trellis until it fills every gap with color. These are not grown for show alone. Every part of this plant is edible. The flowers, the leaves, the young seed pods, all of them sharp and peppery in a way that wakes up a simple salad or a plate of early summer vegetables. An Amish family does not waste space on plants that serve only one purpose. The climbing nasturtium earns its place at least 3 times over. It feeds the table. It draws pollinators deep into the garden at a moment when cucumbers and squash are beginning to flower and need every bee they can get. And it acts as a natural deterrent for aphids, which will cluster on its leaves instead of moving to the more valued crops nearby. Plant it at the base of a trellis already carrying beans or cucumbers and let it weave between them. It asks for almost nothing: thin soil, less water than most plants prefer, and a little something to grip. A garden that is useful and beautiful at the same time is not an accident. It is a decision made early in the season. The fourth plant is one that surprises almost everyone who has not seen it done: winter squash grown vertically. Butternut, acorn, a dense-skinned keeping variety, trained up a sturdy trellis or a fence of woven wire, and supported with a simple cloth sling knotted loosely beneath each developing fruit. Most people look at a squash vine and think there is no controlling it. An Amish gardener looks at the same vine and sees a plant that is asking to be given direction. Left on the ground, a single butternut vine can consume 6 to 8 feet of garden bed in every direction, shading out everything around it and making the fruit difficult to monitor. Trained vertically, it occupies a narrow footprint. The fruit hangs accessible and easy to check, and the bed in front of it remains completely open for a second or even third planting of something shorter. The one specific detail that most gardeners miss: the sling. It does not need to be anything complicated: a strip of old cotton cloth, a scrap of mesh, a piece of cut pantyhose. Tie it gently to the trellis, and the fruit rests in it as it swells. Without the sling, the weight of a mature squash will pull the vine loose before the fruit is ready. With it, you can grow squash that has no business being off the ground in a space no wider than a door frame. The same plant that sprawls endlessly will grow straight up if you simply give it somewhere to go. Take a moment here and think about your own garden right now. Which of these 4 plants could be growing up instead of out? Is there a fence, a wall, a post, an unused corner of the sky above a bed that is currently sitting empty? Sometimes the answer has been right there all along. The 5th plant is Malabar spinach. This one earns its place on this list because it solves a problem most gardeners have given up trying to solve: how to keep greens coming through the deep heat of summer. Common spinach bolts. Lettuce turns bitter. But Malabar spinach, a climbing, vining plant that bears thick, glossy, deep green leaves, does not just survive the heat, it thrives in it. It climbs readily up a simple trellis or a stretched length of twine, growing steadily through the weeks when almost nothing else is producing greens worth eating. An Amish gardener who has grown it once almost never goes back to struggling with summer spinach. The flavor is mild and slightly mucilaginous. It cooks like spinach. It wilts beautifully into soups and stews, and raw leaves hold up well in a salad without going limp in the bowl. It is a plant that does its best work exactly when everything else has stepped back. What most gardeners do not know is how aggressively it will self-seed at the end of the season if a few berries are left to mature and drop. Plant it once with intention, and you may find it returning quietly on its own for years. The summer garden does not have to go quiet. There is a plant ready to fill that space if you let it. The 6th climbing plant is the scarlet runner bean. It comes into its own in the places where a pole bean would struggle: in partial shade, in cooler stretches of the season, in the spots at the edge of the garden that most other beans simply will not tolerate. Where a pole bean wants full sun and warmth to perform, the scarlet runner takes what is available and makes something out of it. An Amish gardener in a yard with a shaded fence line or a north-facing bed does not leave that space empty. They plant scarlet runners and let the brilliant red flowers do double duty, drawing hummingbirds and pollinators into the garden and producing long, flat pods that can be eaten young as snap beans or left to mature into richly colored dried beans worth saving for winter soups. The specific detail most gardeners miss is the root. Scarlet runner beans grow from a tuberous root that, in a mild winter, can be lifted, stored in a cool, dry place, and replanted the following spring, giving you a head start over a seed-started plant by weeks. An Amish family does not discard a productive root. They save it, same as they save seed, same as they save every resource the garden gives them. A plant that performs where others refuse is worth more than a plant that only shines in perfect conditions. Here is something simple you can do this week, before the next planting season gets too far along. Walk your garden and look at every vertical surface you are not currently using. A fence, a wall, a leaning post, the side of a shed. An Amish gardener looks at vertical surfaces the way most gardeners look at open beds, as productive space waiting to be filled. Pick one surface. Drive in a stake or stretch a length of twine and commit that space to one climbing plant this season. You do not need a purpose-built trellis. You do not need anything expensive. You just need something for the plant to reach toward. Start there. The seventh plant, the one worth saving until last, is hops. Not for brewing necessarily, though that is certainly one use an Amish household would find for it. Hops are grown for the vertical structure they create, for the deep shade they cast across a south-facing wall during summer, and for the dried cones that serve as a natural sleep remedy, tucked into a pillow or steeped into a mild tea that has been trusted in traditional households for generations. A hops plant is not small. In a single season, it can climb 15 or 20 feet up a rope or a rough-hewn post, putting on height so quickly in early summer that it seems to grow visibly from day to day. At the end of the season, the top growth dies back to the ground, but the root is perennial and grows deeper and more vigorous with every passing year. A hops plant established in the right spot becomes a permanent feature of the garden, something a family tends for decades. What most gardeners do not know is that hops will grow in soil that most other productive plants would refuse. Rocky, compacted, underworked ground that would discourage a tomato or disappoint a squash suits a hops root just fine. It asks for water in the first season, for something tall to climb, and for patience. A plant that improves every year you let it stay is one worth finding a permanent home for. Gardening is not built in a single season. The most productive gardens you will ever see were not planted all at once and left to figure themselves out. They were shaped across years. One plant tried, one method learned, one vertical surface put to use for the first time. An Amish gardener does not chase the harvest. They build the conditions that make a good harvest almost inevitable, season after season, by making one quiet decision at a time and letting each one compound over the years. The 7 plants in this video are not complicated. They do not require a greenhouse or special soil or years of expertise. They require a trellis, a length of twine, and the simple willingness to grow up instead of only growing out. Start with one. Find where it fits in your garden. Let it do what it was built to do. If one of these 7 plants is already on your list for the coming season, or if this gave you an idea for something you want to try, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me which plant caught your attention and what you are planning to do with it. Thanks for spending some time in the garden with me today. I'll see you in the next one.